Good evening, everyone. As Ugbad said, my name is Anna Catherine, and I usually go by AK. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm a law student with the Interdisciplinary Environmental Clinic at WashU Law. And I'm here tonight to talk about home energy costs and their disparate impact on Black St. Louisans. So in this series, we've discussed many issues like air pollution, asthma, vacancy, and illegal dumping. And high home energy costs are yet another example of environmental racism in St. Louis. While this issue and the issues we've explored in previous weeks were created as a result of structural problems like affordable housing and disinvestment in Black communities, home energy costs have a direct impact on people immediately in the form of monthly utility bills. And like food apartheid, this leads to those who are least able to pay bearing the highest costs. There are home energy costs that all renters and homeowners have to pay to keep their homes powered, like gas and electric. Think of your monthly bill from Ameren Inspire. While everyone has home energy costs, not everyone has a high home energy burden. Energy burden refers to the percentage of household income spent on utilities. 25% of all U.S. households face a high energy burden, where households pay more than 6% of their entire income on energy bills. And 13% of all U.S. households face a severe energy burden, where a household pays more than 10% of its entire income on energy bills. When utility burdens become high and take up a large share of one's income, some people cut back on basic necessities like food and medicine. People also cut back on heating and cooling, keeping their homes too cold in the winter or too hot in the summer to be healthy or safe. In St. Louis, the burden of high home energy costs is majorly borne by Black and low-income residents. Nearly 52% of low-income households and 48% of Black households in St. Louis face energy burdens that are more than twice the citywide median. Even worse is the fact that out of the 48 largest U.S. cities, St. Louis is the 6th highest energy burden on Black households. High home energy costs disproportionately affect Black households because of systemic racism, and this is clearly demonstrated by the hot cities created through redlining. Redlining was a practice by the federal government where neighborhoods were rated on a scale from best to hazardous. In areas deemed to be definitely declining or hazardous, the areas in red and yellow on this map, banks would not offer loans to buy homes because to the banks, it seemed like a risky investment. Redlining has had a disastrous effect on housing to this day. Disinvestment in communities deemed to be hazardous most often meant disinvestment in Black communities. As cities developed, areas that were invested in were predominantly white, and these areas created parks and green spaces. In areas labeled hazardous, no such investment occurred. And instead of trees, grass, and plants, these communities were paved with little to no green spaces and instead have roads, large interstates, and parking lots that absorb and radiate heat. And this impact of disinvestment is severe. Today, redline neighborhoods are significantly hotter than nearby neighborhoods. A recent study of more than 100 American cities found that redline neighborhoods are about 5 degrees hotter than unredlined neighborhoods in the same city. For example, in Baltimore, there are differences of 14 degrees between areas with parks and green space and the redline downtown areas. This disproportionate impact of redlining on city temperatures is disastrous for health. According to the CDC, heat kills more than 700 people annually in the US, making heat the #1 killer for weather-related deaths per year. With redline areas being multiple degrees hotter, this burden is borne more substantially by Black residents. Not only do the hot temperatures make it difficult to be outside in the hot months, it also makes it more expensive to cool down homes. Further adding to this issue is the lack of efficient housing in areas that have been redlined and suffer from disinvestment, which means that it's already more expensive to cool down these homes without the extra burden of the cities being extra hot. But high home energy costs are perpetuated by more than just redlining. So what's making these home energy costs so high? The physical drivers of high energy costs center on inefficient housing. Houses that are inefficient leak heat and air and have to churn out more money to keep appliances running. All that money that's spent goes right out the door, windows, and cracks. Unsealed and inefficient housing also has health effects linked with air pollution and mold. Running inefficient systems and appliances leads to increased energy use and increased air pollution. These inefficient systems can also lead to the growth of mold in homes. We know the fixes. They can be as simple as replacing single-pane windows or inefficient appliances, or caulking areas that have cracks near windows or doors that let cold or hot air out. And even though these fixes may seem simple, they can be costly when added up, which relates to the socioeconomic elements that drive home energy burdens. Inability to afford these upfront costs of increasing energy efficiency perpetuates the problem of those who are least able to pay, paying the highest prices. If you can't afford the upfront cost of getting a new efficient refrigerator or water heater, you will continue to pay higher prices every month on your utility bill. Chronic economic hardship due to persistent low income will also increase someone's energy burden. As your income gets lower, the percent spent on fixed costs like electricity get higher. And sudden economic hardship can also add to this problem, like severe illness, unemployment, or a disaster event like COVID. Additional burdens exist in the form of behavioral barriers. For example, although there are some assistance programs available, there's lack of education and outreach programs, and many people may be unaware of the help that's available to them. On a broader policy level, utility rate design practices, like having high fixed charges on every monthly bill, limits the ability of people to conserve and reduce energy use to decrease their utility bills. And most detrimental, because tenants pay for utilities, landlords have no incentive to update appliances or make insulation better. There are programs in St. Louis to help with the high home energy burdens that Black and low-income residents face. But still, the disparities in high energy burdens persist. One of the programs available is the federal government's Weatherization Assistance Program, which provides services such as installing insulation, sealing and repairing ducts, and tuning and repairing heating and cooling units. These upgrades can reduce the cost of fuel, electricity, and natural gas by upwards of 25% per dwelling. Eligibility for this program is based on income. So for example, a 4-person household is eligible with an annual income of no more than $49,200. The state of Missouri also provides assistance to low-income households through the federally funded Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program. Despite the promise of the LIHEAP program, the funding only reaches 20 to 25% of households and fell $23 million short of ensuring that St. Louisans living 50% below the poverty line could afford their energy bills in 2018. Another resource is Cool Down, Heat Up St. Louis, a nonprofit charity that focuses on helping area elderly and disabled people and low-income families with their delinquent utility bills in the St. Louis region. Ameren also offers some programs like rebates and home energy audits for home energy efficiency upgrades for qualifying customers. They also have a bill support program funded by Ameren's ratepayers. And because of COVID, Ameren has what they call a clean slate program. So this is where a household pays 25% of their balance due and the rest is forgiven if the household is at 250% of the federal poverty line and applies through the correct procedure. And upon my research, that procedure looked pretty confusing. And speaking of the resources that helped during COVID, the burden of high home energy costs has been increased by this pandemic. There was a moratorium on utility disconnections as people lost their jobs and governments realized that many would be unable to pay their utility bills and that could lead to utility cutoffs in the middle of a pandemic. But now, even though the economic downturn is still severe and many people don't have jobs, the moratorium in St. Louis have been lifted. As summer months got hotter and now as the fall and winter months get colder, energy bills increase and people have to make the choice between being safe and comfortable indoors and hiking up utility bills they may be unable to pay. This decision is made even harder because of the increased amount of time people stay home because of COVID. The stay-at-home orders increase the cost households have to pay for utilities. A recent study done in New York City apartments during COVID found a 23% increase in use of electricity. And that increased use leads to increased costs. As people stay home to decrease their risk of exposure to COVID, they're likely increasing their utility bills, a burden many St. Louisans may be unable to bear. And again, this burden is disproportionate. Those in redline areas of the city face an increased burden of keeping their homes cool generally. And now, because of COVID and the stay-at-home orders, these households' energy bills are even higher. To conclude, high home energy costs burden households because of systemic environmental racism. At every turn, low-income and Black residents in St. Louis face higher costs on their wallets and on their health because of structural disparities in access to affordable, safe, and efficient housing. While the government and community are making efforts to decrease the burden of high home energy costs, these efforts have been unable to alleviate or solve much of the problem. We hope this series can start a discussion about how we can decrease energy burdens in St. Louis. We are here tonight to listen to your experiences, your suggestions, your concerns, and your thoughts about solutions. Thank you for letting me speak with you tonight,